Well, I'm bringing back this series. I haven't done this series in over a year. This is Nick Lenz's novel review. Yep, bringing back this series. First time since December of 2019. You're probably asking, Nick, why didn't you do one of these last year? Well, there kind of is a good reason for that. Well, for one thing, part of the year last year the library was closed, so I didn't get a chance to order anything. Another reason was because I didn't have time to read any regular novels. I do have one I'm currently reading right now, but this one I figured though I got this one done recently. This took me almost a week to get through. Now, the last book I reviewed was a James Bond novel, the second one ever released. Of course, that was in December. Now, for the first time in a long time, we're going to a Star Trek book. Yes, a Star Trek book. Yeah, that's something interesting though about this channel. Like, if you look up any previous episode of the series, what novels from these series do you usually find here? Star Trek, Star Wars, and, well, James Bond, obviously, and Doctor Who. Now we're going back to, well, technically, get this. I was looking at basically my first episode. Apparently, the first book I ever reviewed on the novel reviews, and by the way, this is episode 74, it was Star Wars Dark Disciple, an excellent novel. Yes, well, I remember reading about it. Now, here's another really good book. Yes, from the original series. This is Star Trek Agents of Influence. Yep, a recently released book. Written by Dave Ward. Yeah, this guy is a veteran Star Trek novel writer. He's written a lot of books. I've read several of his books, actually. According to the acknowledgments, this is actually David Wade's 22nd Star Trek novel he's ever written. The Ages of Influence is basically this. It's mostly a follow-up to the Seekers series. You're probably wondering, what the heck is the Seekers if you probably haven't watched my videos. The Seekers is simply a spin-off. It's a sequel series to a spin-off series from this one set in the same time period, Star Trek Vanguard. There's actually references to it here. Now, Vanguard was a space station near a place called the Terrorist Reach. It had a brief novel series, ended after 8 volumes, with basically in the final book, the space station be destroyed by a big alien attack, and of course the Enterprise was there. And here's something, a little factoid you might not know about this particular series. It takes place at the same time period as the original series. Yes, this is by far the only book series depicted in the same time period as when Captain Kirk is captain of the Enterprise. This book is basically a loose follow-up to that. Now, one of the ships associated with the Vanguard series and Seekers is the Star Trek Endeavour. Endeavour, by this point of the series, this is basically set during Kirk's last year as the captain of the Enterprise during the year 2270. Yeah, little fun fact about this. In the original series, they never stated exactly when the original mission ended. This is not revealed in the episode of Star Trek Voyager, believe it or not, where they did confirm that his 5-year mission was concluded in the year 2270. And this is set during that time period. Now, interesting thing about this book. Now, basically, most of the cast is here. Except for Chekhov. Yeah, Chekhov is remarkably absent from this book. My guess is this is probably during a period of time when he went to security school. That's probably my guess exactly when this takes place for him. Now, there's about 3 different things going on here. There's basically a setting with the Endeavour. There's stuff with the Klingons, which, by the way, the Klingons are the primary sort of villains in this book, in a way. But the thing is, the Klingons get barely anything to do with this book. I mean, whenever you focus a scene on the Klingons, usually it's there for a good, I think, the longest was basically a research facility, which you went to this place several times in this book. Kronos itself, you went there a couple times. And basically, it's only set there for maybe about 5 or 6 pages. And that's it. The one thing I do enjoy by David Ward's writing is how intelligent he writes all the Star Trek characters. He writes them as very agreeable. The fact they put up excellent points. Now, we also have the novel debut. I don't remember. I think he did show up in the Star Trek Vanguard series. Admiral Nechayev. Yes. Now, you're probably thinking, who the heck is this guy? This guy was actually briefly mentioned in a conversation in Star Trek The Motion Picture. Technically, this character is canon. But this book, he does appear in here. Now you're probably thinking, wait, wasn't there another Admiral Naguna who popped up episode Next Generation? Yes, that is indeed true. It was the episode Measure a Man, one of the best episodes of the series. I met the writer of the episode. And aside from that, like, that was like the only, of course, the Guma basically is picked as sort of as a guy. He's basically, they mentioned that there's not much known about him, is that he's mostly the head of Starfleet intelligence. And that's mostly his side anyways. And the whole idea of Ages of Influence, it takes from an episode of the original series. Is there a follow-up to it? No. Not in the slightest. Where one of the ideas established in the episode Trouble with Tribbles was that we had a human, Darwin, who was actually a surgically altered Klingon. Yes. And it's due to this book that Darwin's not the only one. Apparently there are many. Yeah, it's actually mentioned about the Klingon Empire that apparently both the Klingon Empire and Starfleet have got spies back and forth. Starfleet's got spies in the Klingon Empire, while the Klingons have got spies in the Federation. Kudos. The Klingons, now I'm not really sure why they were written this way, where they're basically there briefly. The Chancellor himself, now this is not Gorkin. No, Gorkin is nowhere to be seen in this book. Surprisingly. They mentioned Chancellor. This is probably just before that 50th anniversary book that came out a few years ago, where it depicted Gorkin, but he's not in this book. This is probably just before that point. That's my guess. So, basically, the Enterprise is sent on a mission by Admiral Naguma to go look for the USS Endeavour, which has been deemed missing. Yes, they find it, where they think it exploded, but they actually discover evidence that it was entirely destroyed. Mostly, its aft section was destroyed. Its saucer section, which contains the impulse engines, is actually still intact, though damaged, mind you. They also mentioned that apparently portion of the ship is actually inhabitable. So the saucer is controlled from auxiliary control, which is like, that's interesting. Oh yeah, the backup bridge. That's mostly what the auxiliary control is. And it's popped up over the course of a few times on the original series. Like, when people think of the auxiliary bridge, it's basically a backup bridge. Kind of like the battle bridge on the Enterprise D. Mostly put, now, it did appear a few times on the series itself. Heck, even appeared on one of the episodes, The Doomsday Machine, where that's where Decker was basically running the ship from, was auxiliary control. Their makeshift bridge, because I'm sure their actual bridge is inhabitable. There's probably no oxygen there. And the fact that this thing also briefly crashed. Bless you! Where it crashed, and basically the mission was simply pick up two Federation spies from the Queen homeworld Cornels, and race back to Federation. But they get caught in this asteroid field, and there's a bit of sabotage, and the ship was actually mostly destroyed. Now, it's also a disruptor field. You're thinking, a disruptor field. Yeah, a disruptor field, where it's developed by the Klingons. And the thing is, according to Spock, it's actually a treaty violation to develop this technology. And when later on in the book, when he just goes to the facility itself with the Enterprise, he tells the person in charge, I need you to evacuate right now so I can blow up your facility, because it's a violation of treaties from both our respective governments. And she basically is hesitant, like, okay, fine, I'll leave. Now, I do appreciate, though, now here's the thing. The way that the scene one of the scenes they have her featured in the book, the head of this facility is a woman, yes, a scientist. Now, apparently the chief of security of this facility is apparently an alcoholic. He loves to drink. Oh, yes, he loves to freaking drink. And he basically, because they had some big shot coming in, he basically put on a gesture for him. He's like, wait, should I bow? And she's like, no, that's completely necessary. So they come in, and the thing is, I'm not sure what the protocol is for the Klingons, but since when is it okay for procedure to have the chief of security introduce himself first, then the person in charge of the facility? Which I thought that was kind of weird. Like, why in the world would they do that? Yes, why would they do that? I have no idea. And this scene is basically just there to show that, yes, they do mention that the research that they've been doing is very valuable to the Empire. So they're not going to let this research go to waste, per se. No, they're not. So they're basically here to make sure that they keep an eye on the place, and well, and of course the Enterprise figures out before they find out about the place. They actually do figure out this is Klingon technology due to the fact they actually were to disable one because they had the Chayef basically watching Spock basically over his shoulder, observing his every move very carefully. And the thing is, the Chayef pointed out though he's in charge of the mission, but Kirk is in command of the Enterprise, and Kirk has no problem with that. And when Kirk was away on a, basically they put together this sort of makeshift ship, basically a civilian ship, basically it's very fast. They go search for the Endeavor, while the Enterprise is a smaller ship, basically in the astral field, while the Enterprise basically keep an eye in case there's any Klingon stuff. And they eventually find out that somebody's up in their shields. They do find it. It's a disruptor thing, where it's basically causing a power drain. And Spock orders it to be disabled, not destroyed. And Che was like basically smiling at that because that's actually a good move. So, after they disable it, they bring on board the Enterprise. And Scotty himself takes a look at it. And both he and the champ both agree that this is Klingon technology and the Klingons are here. Okay. Quite interesting. Meanwhile, though, on the Endeavor, which actually at one point actually crashed, and Kirk does find him. Yeah, he succeeds. Yeah, his mission's pretty successful. And he gets on board. He basically meets with the captain. He talks to the crew members. He talks to the agents. Gives a very bridge briefing. It seems though this briefing that these agents were giving will actually take place, of course, a few hours. Basically just chatting. And basically everything can be verified. He, of course, asked them very good questions, like who's in charge of the military, whatever. And these guys did really good work. And the way it's also written here, they're a bit uncomfortable being dressed by their real names, where they basically slowly get used to that to be on the cover in Klingon space for a few years. Yeah, when they were surgically altered, look Klingon. So, at one point, one of the agents actually is killed via sabotage. Yeah. And it turns out, though, one of the Endeavor's crew was a Klingon spy. And also the Orions are here. Yes, the Orions are here. Because of course they are. They're always in this time period. Not much in the case of Next Generation here. The Orions themselves didn't really appear much. The Syndicate did. But the Orions themselves, not necessarily. I think they popped up for a few episodes of Deep Space Nine, per se. But the Orions themselves, I can't think of a time where the Orions actually showed up in any of the shows. Now, the Orions themselves did show up on the original series. They show up on Enterprise. But Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager, not that I can think of, no. They did have Orion join Starfleet in the Kelvin Time movies. And Orion woman, which was hinted at in Enterprise that the Orion women are the ones running things, not the men. Which, that's quite interesting. The Orions are usually depicted in Star Trek to being slavers and pirates, because these guys would constantly raid ships, kidnap crews, and sell them to slavery. Even selling their women to slavery. It's a common thing, and they also mentioned that the Orion women got this, like these special pheromones that make men instantly fall in love with them, despite the fact not in love with them at all. Though it's mentioned in another book, which does feature Orion joining, in the books themselves, the Orion just joined Starfleet, and she has a drug to keep her pheromones under control. And he picked this in the Kelvin time movie. Basically, two times picked a Kelvin where a Orion joins Starfleet. This book overall is actually really, really good. Thoroughly enjoyable, and by the end, I'm not going to really spoil it very much. The Klingons basically write off the things saying it never happened. Even the champ basically pretends it never happened. But this isn't actually a really good book. If you're curious about the length of this book, it's 353 pages. You're thinking, really? That's 353 pages. It almost looks like a 400-page book, but nope, it's 353 pages. Book is very good. I give this book roughly a 10 out of 10. It's an excellent book, and if you're interested, now this is mostly a lot of spy stuff per se. If you're not really into that for Star Trek, this probably is not your cup of tea, but if you like it, basically, I recommend it's mostly to Star Trek fans or people who are a fan of espionage because there's a lot of spy stuff in here. Not traditional Star Trek stuff per se. There's no sexuality one at this point. No, not necessarily. They did have sexuality depicted in the 22nd century, actually 23rd, in Discovery, but they were shrunk down to barely recognizable to where they were in the original series. Well, in Deep Space Nine. Okay? Great book. Can't wait for my next book I'm going to review, which I haven't read yet. Now, as for when I'm going to do my next book, I highly doubt it's going to take another year again. I highly doubt that at all. So, it probably happen at some point in the future. Next book I probably have set to review is probably a James Bond book, per se. I think it's the most recent book released for this series, which, excuse me, I haven't read yet. Now, you're probably thinking, why haven't I been reading novels, like regular novels, last year? Well, there's a reason why. Because I've been reading a lot of light novels last year. That's pretty much the simple reason for it. That's the simple reason for it. Yep. But yeah, not much to say about this book. It's good. Okay? Now, and when's the next episode come out? I don't know. Depends on when I finish the next book. So, I am planning to do 2 more videos today. One discussing the newest episode of ReZero. The other one discussing the newest episode of 7 Deadly Sins. Hopefully it uploads on the website today. If not, I have to save it for tomorrow. Okay? See you next video. Bye.